Let's welcome Richard. Richard and I are going to have a conversation about some of the interesting options about what comes next after blockchain and Ethereum, and how there could be opportunities with things called token sales and initial coin offerings, ICOs. So we'll probably do this without any slides.
I talk to a lot of people about blockchains, and I find that the best way to help people learn about them is to understand where everyone's at with with blockchains. And so I'd just be really curious. I'm just going to ask a few questions. If you could raise your hand, then I'll be able to get an idea of what people do and do not know in this group. So I'm just curious if you could raise your hand if you've heard of Bitcoin. That'd be helpful. Okay, cool. So that's everybody. How many of you have heard of Ethereum? Okay, so slightly fewer. How many of you have heard of Polkadot? Okay, cool. We got 2. Okay, 3. How many of you have heard about the Interchain? Okay, we got 1 or 2. Yeah, all right. Interesting. So I think I want to just start a little bit at the beginning for people who might not know much about what a blockchain is, and boil it down to one thing really, and that is a blockchain is just right now, and in the Bitcoin blockchain, it's just a list of transactions that lots of computers agree upon. So if I pay you £10 or £10 worth of Bitcoin, and someone else pays someone else £1 worth of Bitcoin, and someone else pays that, a blockchain is just a list of all those transactions that occurred that hasn't been tampered with. And that's really the core innovation of what's going on here, is that all of these computers just agree upon a list of transactions. And that sounds like a simple thing to do, but it was actually very, very difficult. And there's a lot of fundamental computer science breakthroughs that have been made with Bitcoin to get this to work. And so really, as interesting as Bitcoin is, what's more interesting is the set of ideas that came out. And the ideas that... Is it right to get the slide, or we're going to... Yeah, you're on. It's really interesting in terms of the change in the way people started building software. So I joined a project called the Ethereum project about 3.5 years ago, and the pitch then was, let's take some of the ideas of the blockchain and Bitcoin, but instead of just recording a list of transactions, what we're going to do is record a list of operations, and that are computer operations. So instead of building a global distributed ledger, let's build a global distributed computer, or a system for contracts. And the reason why that's interesting is there are many instances where people cannot disagree on where code should run. And it turns out that Goldman Sachs has this problem a lot. So Goldman Sachs, and all of the banks, they try and agree with their Chinese counterparts. Where are we going to run the code that executes this stock option contract? And the Chinese say it should be in China, and the Goldman Sachs says it should be in America. And they go backwards and forwards, and now they have a third way, and that is to run it on the Ethereum network. And that's just like an example of where finance today is touching the blockchain now. What's far more interesting to me is the way in which Ethereum is acting as the bedrock for 1 million more blockchains to launch in the next couple of years. If you want to start a new blockchain and you want to raise money, you create a contract on the Ethereum network and you distribute the tokens to all of the people who are willing to put time and energy into building a new protocol. And so what I'm trying to describe to you is this kind of layering that's getting more and more interesting. At the bottom we have a list of transactions which Bitcoin was built on. And then we have a list of operations that Ethereum's built on. And then we have 1 million blockchains which are built on top of Ethereum. And then out of that, something interesting is going to emerge. And I'm not sure precisely what is going to emerge from that. But the term that a few people have used, and I prefer, is the interchain. And so that is to say the kind of network of blockchains, this system where they're all linked together. Right now we've got a Bitcoin over here, we've got Dogecoin over there, we've got Ethereum over here, we've got shitcoin over there. I mean, there's so many different blockchains, it's crazy. But nobody has built the chain links. Nobody has built the system to allow you to transfer from one blockchain to another. And there are lots of projects now popping up who are going to try and do this. There's one that launched their sale called Cosmos. There's another from one of the founders of Ethereum called Polkadot. And I know of about 15 other projects which are trying to build the Interchain, where they're trying to link together all of these blockchains. Now, one of the things I keep getting asked about my business and what we're doing is well, what's going to happen when you have an interchain? And I think that is as hard a question to answer as when the beginning of the internet came around and people said, what is going to come from the internet? You can make a few guesses, but you probably can't predict Uber. You can have a couple of high-level ideas about how the internet might affect the world, but it's pretty hard to know how it would have affected things today. And that's how I feel about the interchain, is something is going to emerge out of this. And I think the thing that is going to emerge is a rebalancing of where the world's assets are kept. I think that today, if you look at the kind of crypto bubble that's right now, is a few $100 billion of kind of enthusiasm. But that is a microscopic sum of money relative to the global flow of money. So it really doesn't concern me in the long term. Because I think that the 50-year bet is that 50% of the world's assets are either created or are upon or moved to a blockchain. That's the real bet. If you really care about this industry and if you're really embedded in what's going on, when someone creates a new insurance company, are they going to do it with the same old technology? Or are they going to use a blockchain? And this is a wonderful illustration from an amazing designer I work with. And I kind of feel it captures how confusing all of these different blockchains can be. I mean, there's just so many, and they all look quite similar, and it's not really clear which ones you should invest in, which ones you should leave and not touch with a barge pole. But there's something interesting going on. So the thing I really want to talk about, I guess, is how can more people participate in what's going on? How can anybody help? Many times it feels like you need to be an expert cryptographer or a phenomenal programmer or an extreme game theoretician to actually participate in this change in technology. But I think that the barriers are coming down. I think that there are many projects starting to pop up that are welcoming designers and marketers and video creators and all kinds of people to help them not just write the intense code that drives their new blockchains, but to actually explain them and market them and talk about them and integrate them into financial systems. And what I'd love for any of you to do, if you're at all curious about working in this space or putting a few hours a week in this space, to message me on Twitter. I'm Rick Burton, RICBURTON, and I want to point people in the right direction towards the projects where I have a relationship with the founding team and I think that they're doing good things. The reason why people should work on these systems, even just part-time or an hour a week, is that small amounts of effort very early on can be extremely beneficial to the network, and you can be rewarded in the token of the network. My 1 month at Ethereum was at a critical time where absolutely no designers even cared about what they were doing. And I didn't really know what they were doing either, but I did my best to try and visualize what they were doing, and it helped them pitch it to people. And they were kind enough to give me 10,000 Ether for that month's work, and it's changed my life. It's completely changed my life. At the time, that was 33 cents an Ether, and now it's somewhere above $350. And I believe that I am not an exception or like some person who is kind of truly brilliant. I just think that I helped a protocol get started at the right time. And the beautiful thing is there's not just one or two interesting protocols, there's about 100. There's going to be a million bullshit ones, but there's going to be about 100 over the next year that are really, really powerful. And the reason I want to share this story is because I want more people to realize that startups are total bullshit. They are the worst possible way to like work in this world. Let's look at the actual like deal of a startup. Okay, you go and join and you get a batshit small fucking tiny percentage of equity, which is just a allocation of share options, which you need to exercise and spend money to actually get any equity. Then you get hit with a tax bill from your government on a illiquid gain. So your stock has gone up a shitload, which you've bought, but you don't have any cash because they only pay you enough to survive in San Francisco or London. And so you can't actually leave. I worked at Stripe, which is by far and away the best startup I have ever seen. And I think what they're doing is absolutely incredible. But essentially, 750 people have worked to make 5 white men incredibly fucking rich. And I think that although that is positive and, good on them, let me tell you about what it's like at Ethereum, where we've made over 100,000 people $100,000. It's so much fucking cooler. I can't even describe. People are like helping their families, they're starting charities, they're building new businesses, they're traveling. They're like, they are not resting on their laurels, they're energized, they're capitalized, they're doing more interesting fucking things. And they're not worrying about getting the money together to exercise their stock options. They're not terrified of getting fired because they won't be able to pay for their stupid options. They're just doing cool shit.
And they have the tokens, they have an initial coin offering, so they have some share in the future of that company. So, but it's not done in the traditional share option means.
Yeah. So you want me to talk a bit more about initial coin offerings?
Yeah. I mean, you were just saying there's a different way of doing this.
So the core difference here is that a startup is liquid when it IPOs. So if you join Snapchat and you get a bit of an allocation of stock, you wait until a big IPO and then you get some money. So you wait to get your cash, whereas a protocol is liquid from the beginning. So you raise the money, and ideally the token should be worth next to nothing. And if you have belief in the network, then you just hold on to the tokens. Now, I only worked for Ethereum for a month. I did not believe in the network. I didn't really understand what I was doing, but I just forgot about the tokens. I totally forgot about them. I didn't even think about it. And so, but now all the tokens I'm working with, all the protocols I'm helping, I am just going to hold the tokens indefinitely because and the ones that are really, really great are the people who are starting, who are building protocols and they're using a protocol to solve a problem they've cared about for a long time. Now, right now, everyone's rushing into this space and there's a lot of bullshit flying around. I've looked at nearly 2,000 ICOs and I'm only investing in 2. And that's because nearly everyone I see is doing it for the money, whereas the 2 that I'm really excited about, they are founders who are very pure, who are very conscientious people, and they have just impeccable ethical, moral backbones. And they have cared about the problem they're solving for more than half a decade, and now they see that the way to solve it is a blockchain. And so I would just say that I don't think that this is a get-rich-quick scheme, even though a lot of people are stealing a lot of money. But I would say that it's a much more fair way to participate in something, have some ownership, and see if you can get a network to get going.
In a minute, I'm going to bring in Anish Mohammed, the other speaker in this panel. If you just press right, you can see the other two pictures. Is there something else you wanted to say about these pictures?
Yeah, and for me, this illustration really captures the way people should think about contributing. You know, is there are some really incredible seedlings out there, and you've just got to sift through and find them, and then just help them when you can. Help them in whatever way you can. If you're a writer, they need to write documentation. If you're an artist, they need beautiful illustrations like this. If you're a programmer, there's obviously lots of code to write. If you're really fucking good at email, ask to take over their support inbox and say you'll handle it. You know, there's so many ways that you can get involved. And this for me is like really what's going on. But the big mission, the 50-year fucking mission, is let's have a crack at the existing financial system. Let's build an alternative to the insurers. Let's build an alternative to the pension systems. Let's do trading slow. Why do we need high-frequency trading? Does McDonald's really change that much in 0.3 seconds? I don't think they do. And so the beautiful thing is about all of the blockchains and when they're linked together in the interchain, and if the wealth shifts in the way I think it will, is that we just get an opportunity for the next few decades to reprogram things a little bit more fairly. Why is it that 92% of Americans have fewer than $0? If you were to die and go to heaven and then they'd be like, right, we're going to throw you back to Earth, but you can twist a few dials, I think you'd probably twist the number of people who are in debt like down maybe to 5%. How did we get to this point? I don't really know, but I do know that we might well get an opportunity to reprogram it, and it will take a long time. And so the reason I want people participating at this kind of seed stage, this early stage, is if this stuff works, it's going to grow like a fucking weed, and we're going to get to have a crack at all of these arrogant bankers and all of these people who are doing things so wrong.
So what you've heard here is a very forceful and provocative view as to where some of this technology can take us, and we could end up with a much better financial system. Anish, maybe I give you this microphone. You better keep the headset on, otherwise you won't hear what other people say. And let's, you want to come and sit beside here, or are you going to go to the front? And wherever the two of you are most comfortable. Yeah, sure. You can share that between you. You may need to put a headset on, Richard. So, what's your reaction to what you've heard, Anish? And where do you think we are in the process of rebuilding the financial system? And you have a foot inside as well as a foot outside, don't you?
Yes. I probably should admit, I flew in yesterday morning from Ethereum Swarm Summit. It is an invite-only team summit. So a lot of the people he was mentioning are all my friends as well. I also have a foot outside. I advise Ripple, and I used to work for a bank. So I'm one of those crazy guys who actually work in multiple protocols. I'm protocol agnostic. I give a shit about protocols, okay? So I've been a cryptographer before, and I got into this mess as in the payment systems and cryptocurrencies because I'm interested in solving the problem. To me, the biggest thing that I saw that changed the whole paradigm is the ability to attach standards of protocols or contracts or definitions to data. So that is the way it's going to change how we perceive things.
Is that what people call smart contracts?
Yes, that's another way of describing it. So literally, if you were to fly, say for example, I took an EasyJet flight back from Berlin. My flight was delayed by more than 7 hours. They won't pay out. They gave me like a £4.5 worth of euro worth of thing, right? So that's a real practical use of smart contracts. You could actually have an insurance that works for everybody and actually changes the system. But what we need to understand is like 50 years for humans, in my view, doesn't exist. Humans as we are, 50 years, I don't think it exists. There is a window of opportunity, say 20, 30 years, right? Where we as humans make the decisions on Earth or universe as we know it, where we decide what next needs to happen. And in that time, one of the things that I wanted to mention when my other panelists said about what changes in milliseconds is there are lots of things that changes in milliseconds. It might not be worth doing hedging for that millisecond, but imagine each of us actually having our billing for our electricity being billed in milliseconds and nanoseconds, okay? It really makes sense. that is when we can actually benefit. Society as a whole can benefit when we do take decisions in nanoseconds. Again, I'll give you another example. We all just had the elections in the UK. I was not in the country when that happened. I was in Geneva attending another conference talking about ethics of AI. The thing that I would like to highlight is the fact that elections are pretty hard. It takes a lot of resources. Imagine a situation we had the ability to vote for every decision being made. So that is the future I envisage, where we have possibilities. The financial system is going to resist. It's not going to change in a day. It's not going to change in whatever time. But I think what the paradigm shift would occur is the shift in which humans are going to be slowly and steadily replaced by AI. And when that happens, I have more hope that they will be more logical.
And do you agree with the suggestion that 50% of the world's assets will end up in cryptocurrencies of one sort or another?
I mean, I think even more than that. I am optimistic because let me put it this way, right? What is value? Value is an arbitrary process. It's a belief. If you've read Homo Sapiens, you understand that
That's
belief.
the book by Yuval Harari.
Yes, sorry, apologies. I should have explained. Yes. So it's a book by Yuval Harari. He used to teach in Israeli university. It's a course note on social anthropology. He converted that into a textbook. And it differentiates humans from other species. What the other species can't really build is what humans can build. We can build organizations. We can build religions. Okay, I don't want to go into that. But, look at the nicer thing. In a way, at times, when I see people who are very, very protocol specific, I call them almost religionists. Okay? So for me, if you are a Bitcoin religionist, you have a very specific view of the world. For me, Ethereum is just another protocol. For me, what blockchain is a solution for a particular problem. The problem that we need to have a solution for, the problem is called offline double spend. When you spend currency, you have your paper of a currency that you give away. Again, that's a belief. When I give you the piece of paper, you have a belief in the Central Bank of UK, that Royal Bank of England, that they will provide you with a value. God alone knows if there's a God, that's going to be valid, right? So that's the thing. So if I do that, I no longer have that piece of paper in my wallet. But if it's an electronic copy, I can actually do it any number of times. And what blockchain was invented for, to prevent that from happening. And that is, for me, what blockchain is. I can have, it's like an antibiotic, right? When antibiotic was discovered, nobody really knew what the structure of antibiotic is. It's a property. It actually prevents bacteria that's harmful from growing. And that's what this is. It might have n number of shapes, n number of colors, n number of activities, but it'll have a unique property that's general across the whole thing, and that will be useful for humanity. That's the way I see it.
One more question from me before I open up for comments from the floor. What's your view on startups? Are they a waste of time, or are they something that you would put your energy into? Because I think you've been involved in a few startups over the years.
Yeah, I mean, the way I describe it is the following, right? So you can't have a black and white view of the world. What really differentiates humans is the ability, and it goes back to sapiens, right? It's the ability for us in believing things and building things. Some things we as humans, or one person, can't do it. You need things around you. There are different ways in which things could be organized, right? It's like different kinds of religions. Forgive me for using that thing, okay? It's different religions have different aspects to it. Some religions are monotheistic. Some religions have thousands of gods. I come from India. The Hindu religions have thousands of gods, okay? So there are different models of interacting and doing things. So I am not a believer of anything. I am pretty much agnostic. I'm an effective altruist. So I look at the value function, and I would decide based on what value it brings to the table. I wouldn't make a decision based on it looks this way, or this guy's skin color is this guy's surname is this. That to me is really ridiculous.
I'd like to add a little bit of clarification there on startups. I use Stripe because I believe it's, as an example, because I both work there and feel it to be an incredibly well-run organization by very thoughtful, very intelligent founders. And I really feel it's the best startup I've ever seen. And yet still, the employees are shit scared and terrified that they're going to lose their minor claim on tiny sums of equity. Instead of focusing entirely on the product and the customers, I know many of my friends who call me up in tears when they realize the tax bill that they would be faced with if they were to leave. Now, I just think that aspect of startups is wrong. And it's not an aspect that's Stripe's fault or anything like that, because I really have a lot of love for that company. I think what they're doing is incredible. I just use it as, if that's the best startup and everyone working there is miserable thinking about their options, maybe it's time to have a new system, an alternative.
So this is where I would say it's about time that we rethink the structure of startups. Okay, startup as a function is something we can make use of. Probably what's actually really worrying us is the incentivization problem, right? How you incentivize and what happens to you if you, it's the thing about vesting and cliffing, okay? Vesting is essentially how many years you need to be in a startup before you get your equity. Cliffing is if you leave, what happens? You be like stabbed in the back, right? So what we need to understand is we need to actually have a fairer way to distribute the value that's being created by a startup, not to kill the startup, but a fairer way. And this is the thing that we need to think about. And there are things, you know, the way I describe, say, Ethereum and Swarm, I'm part of Swarm, and other things is like, you know, it's a different model by which you generate value and you share value. Probably what startups need to understand is learn from this. I think, for example, Golem and the rest of the guys, they've kind of learned from this. So maybe that's the way forward.
Do you want to explain Golem?
I'll let you do that.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a name that probably many people in the audience don't know.
Okay, I'll explain that. Yeah, okay. So Golem is, imagine you convert the whole world into a supercomputer, that everybody contributes your machines to the network, and everybody as a democratic citizen has the right to, you know, present their application to Golem, the framework. And they will evaluate your framework as in your application, and then they will allow you host it on that application. And then if somebody as a customer comes in and says they want to run your application on the framework, they will charge you both for whatever it is worth, and then they will equally distribute the value across the ecosystem. That's essentially, simply put, what Golem does.
Anybody want to chip into this conversation from the floor?
How can I find the way to invest in that?
So what's the advice for somebody who thinks they're missing out? There's a lot of possible growth in value in these cryptocurrencies. When you already said you looked very hard and you only decided to invest in 2, I'm being bombarded in my email by people telling me the price of cryptocurrencies is shooting up in the last 3 months, and I'm an idiot if I ignore it. I could have made myself several £1,000s already if I'd paid attention to them. Should I pay attention to these emails or not? What's your advice? And I know you're maybe not investment advisors, so take all this with a pinch of salt.
Yeah, I cannot advise anyone to invest their capital into anything, but I can ask you to look at the list of upcoming ICOs and read through them and just look at their websites, look at their white papers, look at their videos, and team, and then do your own due diligence. And if you just Google upcoming ICOs, and that stands for initial coin offering, you will see a huge set of people who are asking for capital.
So they're looking for money, they're not looking for skills. They're looking for people to chip in old-fashioned money, and as a result you get a share of the new coin that they're creating.
The great ones are looking for skills. The great ones are the ones who are spending the time to build a community and to actually try and encourage other people to help out. The poor ones, the ones who are unethical, the ones who are just trying to make a quick buck, they're just trying to raise as much money as possible. So I cannot guide people down the rabbit hole. I can just show them where it is, and this has been my goal here today. I cannot tell you who to invest in for fear of giving you poor advice. But I can suggest, don't trade these things. Just go and help one of them grow. Go make something, go do something, go participate, and give your time and energy rather than your money if you can. Or do all 3. But the real help, the real benefit is when people actually get together and help kick a network off and make a protocol happen. That's my opinion.
Anish, anything to add?
Yeah, so the 2 or 3 things. Firstly, if you are a hardened investor, think about a basket of cryptocurrencies as a very good investment instrument. If you are an investor already, okay, this is what I would say to you. So you can look at it, the returns are pretty good.
So a basket means you invest in several different cryptocurrencies,
Yes,
not just in one.
Yes.
So you don't put all your eggs into the Bitcoin.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, you need to do a reasonable amount of research before you do that. You should see the trends and understand that there are some monopolistic practices that are happening. So be aware of it and do that. Secondly, ICOs. If you consider them as investment instruments, if you invest in the right ones, you would definitely make significant amounts of money. I'm just giving you notions of numbers. I'm not talking to you about your ethics. I'm not talking to you about anything else. I'm just talking to you as just somebody who looks at us as pure numbers, okay? So if you are interested in something very specific, this is a separate thing. So imagine you are interested in a different protocol. Say you're looking at Tezos or you're looking at something else. You understand something really, really well. You understand it so deeply, you believe in it deeply, then you should go do all three as you're saying, right? You give your time, you sign up, and then you give your money. So you just put your money where mouth is, right? And if you do that, yes, absolutely. The value you get on doing that, if your project takes off, is significant because it's like you get a lot more than what you put in.
Are either of you fans of the idea that the blockchain and Ethereum is going to transform how government works? I mean, you already said that a lot of voting might be done by this system instead. And goodness knows, we all feel that surely there's a better way of doing politics.
So I should put my hand up and say I've been co-authoring a book on the India stack, and I've been looking at the governance around the globe because India actually got like 5 pieces right. And one of the pieces that's right, which is super important for any kind of authenticated data source, is identity. Okay?
So it's what India is doing with its identity in nature?
And then they have other stack on
other things are doing, yeah.
So the thing is, like, if you want to use blockchain to do any amount of governance, you need to have identity sorted, right? So if any government step in and sort that out, and whether it's a traditional blockchain or distributed ledger or monkeys, it doesn't matter. Once that's sorted, we have the possibility to translate upwards. So you can have something bootstrapped at something else, and then you can actually transition into a blockchain world.
So your book's coming out on the India stack sometime this year.
Yeah.
Richard.
I think there are two things that spring to mind when I think about government is I want this regulated as soon as possible. I want the links between the blockchains and the real world to happen quickly. I do not want a crypto bubble where lots of people lose their shirt investing in crazy things. And so I'm really keen to get the talks with government going at a much faster pace. I mean, there's already lots of discussions, but I think that the SEC, is going to have to get involved when some random project with a PDF white paper and a video, raises $1 billion in 50 seconds, because someone raised 36 million in 30 seconds a few days ago, and we're very close to the point where someone's going to do $1 billion ICO with nothing but a PDF and a video. Now, if that's not a bubble, I don't know what is. So that's one side of it. The other side of it, I think, is if you start to look into this space, you'll realize that there's lots of these wonderful concepts, but very few good user interfaces. So, okay, we're going to vote on something, but what is the user interface for the vote going to be? What is the user interface for purchasing an insurance contract on the network, or requesting a decentralized Uber, or requesting access to someone's home? And that's actually the area that my company's working on, is we are trying to build the absolute best user interfaces for the most important blockchains.
This is balance.
That's right. And we're having a big announcement tomorrow where we're open sourcing everything we've done that we're able to. And we are going to be inviting lots of people to contribute to our project, because we want to make blockchains accessible to everyday people.
Because it is a common issue that many people feel at one level interest, but they just can't get their head around what's going on.
Exactly.
And a user interface will make it better.
My mental model for it is we've had all these amazing protocol creators. So there's the pseudonymous Satoshi, who no one knows who that person is. There's Vitalik Buterin and Dr. Gavin Wood, who built Ethereum. And then there are other great protocol creators coming out. I think that Juan Bennett at Filecoin is a particularly wonderful human being. And these are people who are building the kind of infrastructure at the base level, the new technologies, the new blockchains. On top of those came a whole bunch of exchanges, and there was Mt. Gox that got completely decimated by its terrible management. And since then, the defining characteristic of any exchange has been do not get hacked. And so Coinbase, Kraken, Poloniex, BTC China, and a host of others have actually managed to weather the storm and be the interstitial layer between fiat money, like pounds, and Bitcoin and all of the other cryptocurrencies. And so really, all of these exchange builders, they've done a phenomenal job at the most critical function they serve, which is don't get hacked. But where they lack a little bit is in product design sensibilities and user interface work and customer support and a whole bunch of like softer skills. And so really now is a really interesting period where user interfaces built on top of all this infrastructure that's been created in the last 5 years are going to become, I think, very interesting.
Do you agree, Anish? Is usability is often the biggest issue here?
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say the other side of usability, security, he mentioned that. So I know a lot about all these exchanges, which I probably can't name them, but it's not as
So
nice.
people did lose money in this, not
tons of them.
because of an error in blockchain, but because of
This
the
is
other layers on top. had
Absolutely. The
mistakes
problem
in
is
them.
the problem is a lot of people think they're smart, which they are not. It's this whole it's not. That's not the question. The question is whether you So there are a whole bunch of people in the world. There are a subset of people who are really smart. There are, all the names that are mentioned. Some of them are friends. Juan, I've known him for a long while. All the guys are known to me. There are people who understand the maths behind it, okay? And there are, you're smart, then you understand maths. And then you need to have the ability to think like an attacker, right? That makes you a proper cryptographer. That makes you the ability to do things so that other peers could review it, and then you have something that's solid. Everybody thinks they're so smart that they can actually create protocols that anybody can't hack. And that's the most stupid thing I've seen for the last 3 years. And I'm shocked that this is the second time and the third time, the nth time that I'm seeing this. And then nobody seems to learn from the previous experiences. And say for example, it's not the first time we have formally verifiable languages. We have a thing called the Red Book. It's the US military produced this donkeys years ago. I think it's older than me. So, they have done so much work. We are not learning from all the mistakes in the past and building things, rather than, trying to do it ourselves.
Okay, we're almost out of time. I think we should let people go quite soon. I'll give each of you a chance to make some final comments, but I am interested in your thoughts, Anish, as to what you may have picked up from this closed-door Ethereum session. I know you can't share anything confidential, but are there things that you're seeing there, the people in that community, what are they realizing is now the opportunities and issues they need to address more than ever before? And then you want to chip in first, Richard?
I'll just say I think it's total bullshit to have a closed-door meeting about an open network whisper. So I really think that's terrible to or swarm, whatever it is. I just think that there are a lot of these closed doors starting to pop up around, and I fucking hate it. I want to see people just open every single piece of discussion out there for everyone to read and comment on and be part of. I mean, we're just going back to the old ways where we have the smoky rooms where everyone gets decided by a bunch of white dudes. I want to see every single conference that's fucking expensive. I want to see everything published online and every conversation there so that the community can participate. So that's how I feel about it. So I don't mean to pick on the meeting you've just been to, and I'm sure they're going to do fantastic work, but why is everything switching to default closed? Let's default open and go from there. I'm pretty strongly opinionated, as you know, but I also try to be pretty friendly, and if you'd like to chat to me, I'm on Twitter, RICBURTON, Richard Burton, and it'd be great to continue the conversation there, because I'm sure you've all got to get on with your day. Lovely to be, thank you for your time.
Yes, so Anish.
So I am probably not going to defend the decisions made by other people, but I should be very clear. I don't know how much complexity understands, but complexity is very key in the world. If you have 2 people, I can do 1 handshake. If you have n people, you have n factorial. That is a problem. And communication is very, very hard when you have hundreds of millions of people. So generally what happens, and if you look at building software, which is what I've done, I've built massive systems in my life. That's what my expertise is. So looking at big problems and solving them and thinking about the hard problems. So if you want to solve them, you need to have smaller set of people to make key decisions. Sometimes some things work that way, and some things it has to be open. I agree. For some things, it's a different class of different class of problems have different class of solutions.
And what's the future of Ethereum?
I definitely think there is a good lot more coming on top of it. The summit I was there, I saw 8 to 10 teams that are actually building on top of it. So, the way I describe it is like when, a bunch of Lego blocks are given to a bunch of kids, they use their imagination to build whatever they want. I don't know what the hell is going to come out of Ethereum in the next 3 years, because every time you go to a DevCon, it's like you go, add the explicitives, right? I never thought this could be done. And these guys have actually got a working demo for you. And you go, how?
So is it like it's the new internet? Once in the 1990s, people put huge amounts of money into internet stocks, and most of them crashed and burned. But some of the most successful ones continued growing and growing, and it has indeed changed the world, even though there was a lot of unnecessary hype and craziness for a while.
If you think about blockchain as a protocol, as the data structure I describe as a protocol, and the basis on which other things are going to be built, the two things I would say this is key. I really want to be very, very clear. Some form of authenticated data. You call it blockchain or monkey chain, I don't care, right? And secondly, the ability to attach policy to data. These two things will change the way we look at the world in many years.
Anish Mohammed, Richard Burton, thank you very much, and thanks to the audience for being so patient.